There's something practically mythical about the Ducati brand. For decades, it's symbolized a kind of mechanical passion that feels distinctly important to motorcycle enthusiasts. Precise desmodromic valves, clattering dry clutches, the silhouette of a red superbike burned into the collective consciousness of multiple generations of motorcyclists. But today, Ducati exists in an entirely different reality. The company is bigger, more polished, more corporate, and backed by one of the largest automotive groups on Earth. They've made concessions and sacrifices for the sake of reliability and widespread adoption. It is something that the most devout Ducatisti have struggled to accept, yet strangely, in some ways, Ducati is better than they've ever been, despite being a watered-down distillation of their past self. A polished, efficient, sanitized echo of the raw, imperfect brilliance that made them famous in the first place. Today, we're going to talk about how it happened, if it's for the best, or if it even matters at all. Let's get into it. Look, if you want to understand the magnitude of Ducati's metamorphosis, you need to look at the company as it exists today in 2025. Ducati currently operates under the umbrella of the Volkswagen Group, nestled beside brands like Lamborghini, Audi, and Porsche. A family of automotive giants with engineering budgets that rival a third world country's GDP. Ducati once produced motorcycles in the low 10,000s annually. Now they push close to 70,000 per year. Their dealer network is actually massive. They're global, polished, and consistent. A far cry from their origins as a scrappy, bootleg boutique OEM like countless other Italian motorcycle manufacturers. Their image has been transformed from that of some ragtag racers building one-off machines meant to only last the duration of a race to that of an international luxury brand. And because of that scale, Ducati now builds motorcycles for nearly every kind of rider. The Panigale V4 represents the modern iteration of their excellent racing tenure. But that's only a sliver of the modern Ducati oeuvre. Today, in addition to flagship superbikes, they have sport touring tall rounders, muscle cruisers, motards, and even an adventure bike. Their offerings are diverse and their hold on the market is significant, but this expansion does come at a cost. To support this diversity, Ducati uses the same cross-platform playbook we see all the Japanese manufacturers doing. Their new V2 engine is everywhere. It's in the Panigale V2, the Street Fighter V2, the Monster, the Hypermotard, the Multistrada, and even the updated Desert X. It's by all means a great engine. It's torquey, linear, and makes a great sound. It has the highest power-to-weight ratio of any two-cylinder engine Ducati has made to date. But it's also pretty damn normal by Ducati standards. It's modern, rational, and versatile. You could almost even describe it as unromantic. It's sort of like Ducati's answer to the parallel twin, and they're shoving it into every single bike, which makes them all a little less special, don't you think? It doesn't even have an Italian spicy name like Desmoquattro or Testastretta. It's just V2. Not even V2. The V4 follows a similar story. The Desmosedici Stradale, the spiritual descendant of Ducati's MotoGP program, lives only in the Panigale V4 and Street Fighter V4. Every other V4 model, the Multistrada V4 or the Diavolo, they all use the V4 Gran Turismo, an engine specifically designed without desmodromic valves, resulting in long service intervals and a smooth and predictable demeanor. Desmos, which were once the backbone of Ducati's mechanical identity, now exist only in the highest echelon in their catalog. Even the Hypermotard 698 Mono, one of Ducati's most interesting recent developments, is stifled by the same market optimization. They developed the most powerful production single-cylinder ever made with Desmos and all, yet, despite the R&D investment, Ducati refuses to iterate on the new platform. They haven't used the engine to revive the Super Mono, an ultra-lightweight single-cylinder racer. Because Ducati, in its modern iteration, doesn't really make weird passion projects anymore. They make strategic projects with guaranteed returns on investment. And that further exemplifies the theme of today's video. Ducati today is very different from Ducati of the past. To understand what was lost, we have to look back to an entirely different world. Ducati was founded in 1926, not as a motorcycle company, but as a producer of radios and electrical equipment. Think of them like an OG Radio Shack. Their factory in Borgo Panigale was modest and perpetually underfunded. World War II shaped industry in Italy across the board, and Ducati was not immune to this. They had to reinvent themselves in order to survive in the new landscape. Like many of the companies in this era, Ducati took to manufacturing motorized bicycles to serve post-war Italy and put mobility at the core of its new philosophy. But Ducati's true identity didn't emerge until the arrival of Fabio Taglioni in the early 1950s. His influence on the early days of the brand cannot be overstated. Taglioni was a true visionary, blending expertise in engineering, artistry, and design. He pioneered the Ducati L-Twin, not because it was easy or efficient, but because of its performance and character. He refined the steel trellis frame, taking architecture that was once reserved only for racing and applying it to production motorcycles. And maybe most importantly, he pushed Ducati towards desmodromic valves, a system that was so complicated no other manufacturer deemed it a worthwhile investment. Joke's on them. Because Desmos became a fixture of Ducati's DNA. It allowed valves to open and close with extreme precision regardless of engine speed. It was expensive to produce, harder to maintain, borderline unnecessary, but absolutely iconic. In the 70s, Ducati started to look less like a grassroots racing outfit and more like a serious motorcycle manufacturer. The 750SS and 900SS proved they could build production machines that mirrored their racing achievements. And no, those are not CF Moto models, those are Ducati models. Get it straight. Stories from this era of Ducati feel almost mythological. Small teams, hand-building bikes, and ultra-limited production numbers resulting in machines that were temperamental yet magical. By the 1980s came the Desmo Quattro era. Ducati entered the global stage with serious force. The Desmo Quattro engine was designed based on Massimo Bordis's university thesis, while Ducati was under the control of Cagiva, bringing the four-valve architecture into Ducati's flagship machines. The engines were a turning point for Ducati. They won races fiercely and unapologetically. Ducati became the underdog zero to hero in World Superbike, topping Japanese manufacturers that had way bigger budgets and more experience. The birth of the Monster in 1993 also marked a keystone in Ducati's legacy. Miguel Galuzzi designed it as a parts bin special. It used a steel trellis frame and an L-twin engine paired with minimal bodywork and upright ergos. The bike became a cultural phenomenon. It was the motorcycle that saved Ducati financially. It made them look young, cool, and accessible. It turned Ducati from a niche race shop into a global brand. For the first time, people who weren't pasta-pilled track rats could ride a Ducati. The Monster was a Ducati for everyone. It became a backbone of the brand for decades. Then, of course, came Massimo Tamburini's masterpiece, the 916, the motorcycle that was so beautiful it has been displayed in design museums around the world. It wasn't just a bike, it was a sensual object of desire as much as it was an apex predator in World Superbike. It has long been revered as a symbol of Italian design excellence. The 916 defined Ducati's identity more than any moment prior. Every Ducati since has been haunted by that silhouette. From there, the Testa Stretta engines arrived, born from racing but mass-produced for street bikes. They powered everything from multistradas, hypermotards, and monsters. They were the connective tissue between Ducati's race engineering and their consumer lineup. It was a reflection of a time when Ducati's superbikes and their everyday bikes still felt spiritually intertwined. And then this, of course, leads us to the modern V4 era. The Desmo Sedici Stradale is a MotoGP-derived engine that has blessed many enthusiast riders unworthy of its greatness. When the Panigale V4 arrived, it was a very significant moment. It was the pinnacle of Ducati's superbike engineering ambition. But unlike the Testa Stretta era, where the flagship engine trickled into the rest of the lineup, the V4's influence has been cordoned off. No trickle-down effect, no directly mirrored DNA strands between the race bike and Ducati's consumer models. Instead, they built an entirely separate engine, the V4 Gran Turismo, designed to balance performance, reliability, and ease of use. And this was where things really started to change, because this divergence, building one engine for race replicas and one engine for everything else, quietly marked the end of Ducati as it once was.
If you're trying to step up your motorcycle content game, whether you're making full YouTube videos or you just want your riding clips to look like they came out of a sci-fi movie, you need to hear about the DJI Osmo 360. First of all, it records 8K 360-degree video. This camera captures more detail than the human eye. You can mount it to your helmet, your bars, your fairings, the tail, anywhere, and suddenly your ride to Starbucks looks like a MotoGP onboard lap. It's practically foolproof. You don't aim it, you don't adjust it, you don't do anything. You just hit record, just put it on, it's great. Later on, you spin the world around like a wizard, choosing your favorite angle. You want a POV shot? It's in there. You want a rear-facing chase cam shot? It's in there. A side profile lean angle shot? Yep, you guessed it. One ride gives you infinite camera angles. The Osmo 360 is also the lightest, least annoying camera I've ever put on my bike, and the stabilization is nuts, even when riding off-road, which I do find myself doing from time to time against my better judgment. The battery life lets me record all afternoon, internal storage saves you if you forget a card, and because it's part of the DJI ecosystem, it plays perfectly with the DJI Mic Mini for clean onboard audio. If you want your content to look pro level like ours does, check out the DJI Osmo 360 using the link below.
One of Ducati's most defining characteristics throughout the 20th century was its obsession with motorcycles as art, a succinct melding of form and function. Taglioni sculpted engines and frames like they were cathedrals, every angle chosen for aesthetic harmony and performance in equal measure. Tamburini, who is perhaps the most famous motorcycle designer in history, created a motorcycle that challenged what riders expected, yet satisfied an aesthetic desire they didn't even know they had. The 916's undertail exhaust, the symmetry of frame and single-sided swing arm, the flowing, purposeful bodywork, it now feels so obvious, but at the time, it was groundbreaking stuff. Pierre Terblanche pushed Ducati into boundless new directions with the 999, Hypermotard, and Multistrada. He designed motorcycles that looked and rode like nothing that had ever come before them, solidifying Ducati as pioneers and visionaries, not just for performance machines, but for motorcycles that looked and felt like a breed entirely of their own. These designers didn't work with market data or focus groups. They didn't cross-reference brand verticals or calculate ROI projections. They communicated ideas with steel, aluminum, and carbon fiber. They were building the future of motorcycling with artistic instinct rather than corporate strategy. And success was never guaranteed. It was risky. There were failures and flops, but Ducati wasn't trying to be safe. They were trying to be great. They were trying to be Ducati. Today, Ducati still employs designers and engineers with extraordinary talent, but the result no longer feels like the kind of result of unbridled creativity of the past. It feels more like a product pipeline. They're still great-looking bikes and convey a lot of emotion, but they also feel really safe and controlled. Like the rough edges have been ground down by the demands of global economics. Like they've all been smoothed over, watered down, and generally compromised for the sake of bottom line figures. Most people believe the turning point of Ducati to be in 2012 when it was acquired by Audi under the Volkswagen Group. The motorcycle community reacted with a mix of optimism and dread. Ducati would certainly gain financial stability, manufacturing precision, and global reach, but would they also lose their soul in the process? Now, 13 years later, we can see clearly that VW's investment transformed Ducati's reliability. Gone are the days when Ducati ownership required ultra-disciplined and costly maintenance protocols. You didn't need to budget an extra 30% of the bike's MSRP just to prepare yourself for unexpected repairs or frequent service. Today, Ducatis start basically every time. Maybe not on the first crank, but they'll still start. They don't leak, they don't nuke electrical components should they get caught in the rain. They are respectable, well-made motorcycles with much higher manufacturing quality control standards and a lot of performance to boot. And now, their dealer network is strong enough to support serious growth. You can live in a small town in the Midwest somewhere and be only 150 miles away from the nearest Ducati dealership instead of 600 miles away. In many ways, it mirrors what happened with Lamborghini after Audi acquired them. They went from producing charmingly tumultuous supercars to reliable, technologically advanced machines. Yeah, they lost some of the X factor with many models being sort of re-skinned Audis, but they gained the ability to compete as a modern business. Ducati's transition has been very similar. The new Panigale V2 is easier to ride, own, and maintain than a 998 ever was, despite making similar power. The Multistradas are refined to the point of being like a luxury SUV. The new engines allow for service intervals that make owning a Ducati feel almost normal. The V2 engine platform being shared across so many models feels morally wrong for a brand that was defined by race-bred artistry, but it makes sense to produce bikes that are cheaper and easier to maintain and often being more reliable too. It allows Ducati to offer pricing that is slightly more competitive than it has been in the past, while also operating in other categories beyond just sport bikes, because that's kind of what makes the money. Plus, it allows them to reserve the truly exotic engineering to their flagship models where it really matters. In some ways, the brand has become less exclusive, but paradoxically, also slightly more premium, more polished, more trustworthy. They're a completely different animal than the hand-built race bike brand that once fought for survival. But the interesting angle is that Ducati's transformation doesn't mean the brand has abandoned its roots. If anything, the evidence suggests the opposite. The 2026 Panigale V4R is one of the most advanced production superbikes ever built. It is a technological marvel, the modern expression of everything Ducati has valued about racing performance. Its existence proves that Ducati still knows how to be Ducati when they choose to be. They haven't forgotten their heritage, they just compartmentalized it. Maybe that's the lesson here. Maybe Ducati realized that not everyone wants or needs a barely tamed race bike with lights and a license plate that is barely rideable. Maybe most riders want reliability, comfort, and ease of ownership. All the things old Ducati could have never dreamed of. Maybe the brand's future lies in separating its artistic endeavors into dedicated halo products while allowing its mainstream lineup to reflect what real-world riders actually need. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, Ducati's kind of like Porsche in that way. And Ducati's different today, but the change hasn't depleted their identity. It's just an evolution. They're a modern brand with global influence, financial stability, and engineering power that its founders could have never imagined. And maybe all of that's okay, because if you still want that pure, tried and true Ducati magic, the Desmo valves, the MotoGP DNA, the unapologetic Italian superbike, it's still there. You just have to pay like, $30,000 or $40,000 to get the Panigale V4. I think it's worth it. Ducati is no longer Ducati. Not the Ducati of an older Bologna workshop or Taglioni's early inventions or the 916 or the OG Monster, but the Ducati we have today might be the only version of the brand that could survive in the modern world. They've traded chaos for consistency without outright conformity. Beneath the corporate backing and the aura of German automotive luxury, the Italian spark is still there. It may be quieter or more restrained, but it's still there. Ducati has changed because, as Blink-182 once penned, I guess this is growing up. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Appreciate you guys checking out today's video, and Happy New Year's. I'll see you guys in the next one.